That's simple. You have 3 choices. Just type in TuneIn Radio. Once the app is downloaded, search for DZRJ 810 AM. For Radio Garden app, once it's downloaded, search for DZRJ 810 AM. And for Streema app, that's STREEMA. And once it's downloaded, search for DZRJ 810 AM. And now you can enjoy DZRJ 810 AM anytime and anywhere. Hey, it's free.
You are watching the multi-awarded Radio Bandido TV on Channel 224 Sky Cable and TV Plus boxes. Simulcast on DZRJ 810 AM. Informing, advising, and entertaining the Filipinos and OFWs around the world. Streaming live on www.facebook.com/DZRJ 810 AM or on YouTube, channel RJAM News. To all Teleradio Bandido viewers and listeners, you can now watch Teleradio Bandido on our new YouTube channel, RJAM News. Hit the subscribe button and like the video. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified when a new video gets uploaded. Don't miss out on our dynamite lineup.
A straight question deserves a straight answer. Presenting straight from Radio Bandido in partnership with the Philippine Star. An ongoing question and answer series with candidates for the May 9 elections. This week's candidate, presidential aspirant Manny Pacquiao, answers the question straight. This is straight from Radio Bandido.
Senator Pacquiao, what was your greatest achievement during your service in the Senate?
Marami po tayong naipasang batas sa Senate. Hindi po bababa ng 27. At marami po tayong na-file na bill sa Senate. Nasa mga kulang-kulang 200 po. At yun po yung pinakamagandang nagawa ko. Yung Bible holiday, Bible Day na naipasa natin, magkaroon ng importansya ang Word of God.
That was straight from Radio Bandido. Stay tuned daily till Election Day for this ongoing series.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam. My name is Eric Lecain, and I am joined, as always, with Lali Tolentino right here on the radio and television and YouTube and Facebook as we talk about stories going on around the world, some of the most interesting things that happened this week. Then later we'll get to some of the questions from our viewers. So, Lali Tolentino, I know you have been under the weather lately, but you have survived and you have made it here to the show, which we are so glad. Lali Tolentino, how are you feeling today?
Well, I feel great this morning, Eric. It's Sunday. It's our day. So I feel good. God is good. He gave me another day of my life. What about you?
He is good. So I am doing fine. I am doing a little bit of traveling now. I will be traveling back to the Philippines here in the next day or so. So I will be back just in time because, you know, one of the things in the Philippines I have to say, and just from watching the news this week, you know, one of the things that the Philippines does not need, besides a world pandemic and a possible war, is a volcanic eruption. I believe the Philippines now is having volcanic eruptions again. The Taal volcano, a small volcano, if that's possible. Didn't it blow its top this week, shooting smoke about 1.5 kilometers into the sky?
Well, you know what? Some friends of mine who live in that area in Tagaytay, and they took pictures of the volcano. It was amazing, honestly. And they get excited looking at the volcano in the morning. That was yesterday, and for me it's like, well, maybe the volcano is telling, hey guys, I'm still here, I'm still around, because you guys are busy with the war or busy with the pandemic. and you're busy with the election. So here I am. I'm still here. I'm the volcano saying hello to you.
Yes, as what is it? Magma and water intertwined together in the main crater and made this massive explosion, which spectacularly blew up, blasted up into the sky, which made them raise the alert level to number 3. So, which is possible hazards such as fast-moving gas and lava, and possibly a lake tsunami. I had never heard of a lake tsunami, Loli Tolentino, until this particular thing. But it turns out lake tsunamis are something that really happens. By the way, no one was injured in this volcanic eruption.
No. This is not like the one that we had, before pandemic of March 20. No, that was January 12 of 2020, before the pandemic.
Yeah,
So because the ashes of that eruption even got to Manila, so we got all this thing. Remember, I think you were still here.
Yeah,
at that time,
I remember this. But speaking of volcanoes, this has nothing to do with volcanoes, but there was an avalanche in Alaska this week. Talk about crazy stuff that's happening this week. 60 to 80 feet deep of snow, just blew down off the mountain and cut off 100 homes from the world. No electricity, no internet, no nothing. People were told not to come out of their houses for fear that the snow could shift at any time. And they don't want they don't even want to clean the snow off because they're worried if the snow will shift, it'll just bulldoze over all these houses. So crazy stuff going on there in Alaska. And then something else I heard this week, which I find fascinating, is the Conger Ice Shelf in Antarctica. It's about 460 square miles. It collapsed this week.
Wow.
So why would a 460 square mile piece of ice collapse? And it turns out that it is 40 degrees hotter than it normally is in Antarctica. So the temperature is rising. And supposedly this ice shelf has been decreasing in size over the past couple of years, and it finally just fell apart. And you know what this does, Loli Tolentino, when this kind of ice falls apart? It worries scientists. Because,
really?
Yes, this is the main spot where seawater turns to ice. It's in Antarctica, which is currently at the lowest level that sea ice has been in years since we've been watching sea ice, I guess. So
this really says climate change. This is it.
Yeah. I mean, it turns out that the problem because everybody goes, it's in Antarctica. It's just a bunch of sea ice up there. But the problem is that these ice shelves are basically extensions of the land that reach out over the ocean. And the ocean runs underneath these things. And it keeps, the ice keeps these massive glaciers from floating out to sea. And the problem with these glaciers floating out to sea is they are super big. And when they get out into the ocean rises, and rising water levels, even if it's a small amount, can cause a whole bunch of problems. And the issue that's coming is that this one ice shelf is holding back the Thwaites Glacier, which is also known as the Doomsday Glacier. And it is super big. It's bigger than the island of Mindoro. It's this massive, giant icelet. And so it turns out that the ice shelf that's holding it from breaking off and going off into the ocean is starting to break apart. And so this is what scientists are saying is so important, that they need to do something about this, because once it starts, there's no way to stop it. And I mean, if a piece of ice the size of Mindoro is floating around out there in the ocean, there's really nothing you can do. You can't move it. You can't stop it. It's hundreds of square miles. And as it gets out into the ocean, it gets down to the warmer climate, it'll start to melt, and the ocean level will rise. And that causes all kinds of problems. So that's something so we've gotten to all the super horrific and scary news that's going on. There's one other piece of news that I wanted to get to, which I'd like to report on. And we've reported on this before, Loli, is that this week, the list for the happiest countries in the world was released.
Okay. Where is it? Where?
So, of all the sad, yes, the Philippines. No, after the surveys, it's 150 countries. They do these surveys for the whole year. I mean, what an interesting job that must be. So, but I was very surprised at what the surveys came up with, that kindness is up in the world. So interesting, huh? That kindness is gone up in the world. In fact, it turns out that in this survey they do, they see 25% of the world in 2021 is happier than they were in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Go figure.
Tell me more.
Okay, well, I will. So anyway, Finland, again, is the number one happiest place in the world. And I remember when we talked about this before, it was Finland. Healthy life expectancy, GDP per capita, social support in times of trouble, low corruption, high trust in their officials, generosity, where people look after each other, and the freedom to make your own life decisions is in Finland. Okay, so where it's cold. Also, number 2 was Denmark, and then Iceland, then Switzerland, then the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Sweden, Norway, all these really cold countries. Everybody is happy. The next on the list was Israel, which I thought was a little weird. And then to make out the top 10 was New Zealand. But I thought it was very fascinating that the happiest countries in the world are all freezing cold. I'm trying to figure out what that happens. Why is that? Why is that? Why do you think that is? Like, they stay inside. They don't get out. They don't get mad as easily because it's not as hot.
Yeah, maybe. And you know what? They will be stuck at home and do nothing, so they're happy.
So I guess I would be. I could just sit home and watch Netflix all the time. The United States was 16th, and the Philippines was 60.
Really?
Yeah, they were number 60 on the list. Russia was 74, right up next to Hong Kong.
Oh.
So there you go. So that's it. You know who was at the bottom of the list for the next year in a row? I don't know how many years in a row they have been at the bottom of the list, but Afghanistan is the most unhappy place to live in the world.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised because, they have so many problems in that country. Unfortunately.
One problem after the other. Of course, one of the places on earth that's not really that happy right now is the Ukraine, as we all know, as Russia continues to bombard their way across the Ukraine. If you've been watching this unfold on television, and I'm sure you have, Lolly Tolentino, you can't help but see that there's two extremely different takes on this war or invasion, or as they say in Russia helping the Ukrainians, which is the description that they keep using on Russian television. In fact, as of now, it's basically illegal to report anything that is not saying that the war is going great in Russia. In fact, I think if you say the word war, you can go to jail in Russia right now. According to what I read, you must say that Putin has brilliant strategies, and this will all be over soon, with Russia as the victor against the West. But as we have been watching on reality television, this is not exactly how it's been going. That's the problem. The way people are looking at it, it's not really going the way I think Russia had hoped that it would. From what I saw this week, every day it seems like the Ukrainians have some kind of surprise for Russia, something that they never expected. In fact, right now, if you watched it this week, the Russians are kind of looking like incompetent fools. When the war started, the Russians had, this many tanks and the Ukrainians had this many tanks. And now the Russians have fewer tanks and the Ukrainians have more tanks. And it's true, the Ukrainians are stealing the Russian tanks. And, as the Ukrainians have begun to interrogate their prisoners, they're finding out more and more that these Russian soldiers had no idea that they were going to be killing their countrymen. This is what I find that's fascinating. They were told that this was a training mission, that they would go back to Russia in a few days. But, they did go back to the fact that they have been ordered to progress farther into the country. And they keep saying this. And the reason they haven't knocked out the communications towers, they knocked out a lot of them, but not all of them, because the Russians need them. Because the Russians don't have their own secure network. So many times they're giving orders on cell phones that, of course, can be listened to by the Ukrainians and recorded and played back on CNN over and over and over again. So many of these Russian soldiers, they're pinned down as Ukrainians are shooting at them from all sides. So imagine what that must be. You see your generals and your commanders being killed. You're running out of food. You're running out of gas. And they are listening to all your orders on cell phones. So this is what's led to this week, Eli Tolentino, of all the accusations of war crimes by the Russians. Because, according to the rules, you can target the enemy. If you accidentally kill some civilians, that's part of war. What can you do? However, you can't specifically target civilians. And there's several conversations that have been recorded on these cell phones of Russian soldiers giving the order to shoot missiles at civilians. And the Russians are, the soldiers are saying, could you please repeat that order? And the voice orders comes back to target civilians. And so this is what the Russian military seems to be resorting to because nothing else is really working.
Yeah, they're desperate. That's why they have to do this. So I think this war should really stop as soon as possible. But, superpowers are,
I mean, the Russians, they're losing tanks, they're losing warships, fighter jets, thousands upon thousands of soldiers are being killed or captured. So, it's possible that Ukraine looks like, anyway, that they're winning the war. And TV is kind of making it look like, it's possible that they could win the war. The question we all have to ask is it possible that Ukraine could beat the Russians? Because right now the Russians have a lot of bad PR, and they're making Zelensky and the Ukrainians look like they are the heroes, that they are winning this thing. I mean, Zelensky is going to be voted most sexiest man in 2020. You wait and see. I bet you every single woman in her late 30s, early 40s is in love with this Ukrainian beefcake. I mean, he's on TV now all the time, and the Russians want to kill him. But, I think if the Russians do finally get to Zelensky and they kill him, I think that would create a world war. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But, if they don't kill him, and I don't think they will, I think the tide of the war, and this is, something I wanted to just discuss really quickly on the show. There's one thing that we, it looks like the Ukrainians could win, that, the Russians are so incompetent and they're getting killed and so forth. But there's one thing that we continually not talk about that Putin has the upper hand at, and that is the EU needs Putin because he is the one that controls the gas that goes into Europe. And this is a big deal. And people think, if they don't have the gas, it's not okay. I mean, right now they're going into the summer months, but if this thing delays into the winter months, and I think that people in Europe, they love Zelensky, they love Ukrainians, but they love the Russian gas more. And right now, the Ukrainians, they want to join the EU, but Putin is still saying the Ukrainians are part of Russia, and he's not going to stop this until somebody puts a bullet in the back of his head. And I don't know if that's going to happen because I think, he sits at those really long tables and they can't get to him. So, it doesn't matter how much military gear and how many soldiers get killed. He's got more. He has weapons we haven't even seen yet. He's got these small nuclear weapons that they keep talking about, these, little tiny nuclear weapons that, are incredibly destructive, but not like the giant ones. But still, he's got biological weapons. He's got all these things that can drag this thing out for a long time. And before, if you remember, the Soviet Union feared the U.S. They feared the West. They wouldn't think of using these things to destroy, the Ukrainian people or their own people. But I don't think at this point Putin will mind using unconventional weapons like biological weapons because he doesn't fear the West anymore. He doesn't fear it because he's got the gas and he knows that they won't be able to deal with this without it. And so, in my opinion, he's taken this humongous gamble because he believes that the United States and NATO fear the possibility of nuclear war. And the Europeans, they fear the possibility of home gas prices going through the roof. And in some ways, he's right.
Okay.
So I'm just pointing that out. And I would like to, there's another story that is on the back burner. It's kind of simmering on the back burner that I know that you're interested in as well, which I think, it's going to lead up to this. Back in the 1990s, I was thinking about this the other day. Back in the 90s, if you remember, China was doing all kinds of crazy things. They were running training exercises right off the main bow of Taiwan, very similar to what Russia was doing. And, China said, Taiwan is not a country. It is part of China. And we will take it if we wanted to, just like what Russia is saying about the Ukraine. There are correlations here that are just, there's one after the other. So remember back then in the 90s, China was doing all this crazy stuff. So President Clinton rolled in the U.S. fleet of ships, to that thin little sea between China and Taiwan. And China backed off because they gave up on the idea because the United States was just too powerful and they didn't want to do it. But now China's doing the same thing again. And they did it this week, running these fighter jets into Taiwan airspace. And we've been talking about on the show a lot, about these fighter jets that are running, almost every day. And so President Biden, he did the same thing. He ran his U.S. destroyers right into the same place between Taiwan and China. And you know what happened? You know what happened this time? Nothing. Because things have changed. Nothing happened. China's not afraid. They're like Putin. They're not afraid of the U.S. anymore. They have enough, economy to, sustain a long war if they needed to. And, since Biden did this, since Biden moved these destroyers in, and we talked about this on the show, last month, since he's done that, they've actually upped the number of times that they're doing flybys on Taiwan, into Taiwan airspace. And they just recently stopped just short of claiming Russia was a new ally. So there I was thinking about this today. I mean, are we, reverting back to 12th century when the time where dictators ruled the world?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised because it's happening already. Actually, it's just in the modern times. And you know what? Who would be next? And this is one of the topics that the debate. I mean, not the interview happened last night. It's Sabah, Malaysia is part of the Philippines. So don't be surprised. We have that thing also in the Philippines.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say the Philippines.
I don't think they're going to go that far.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, China hates the fact that Taiwan has free and fair elections. I mean, Russia hasn't had a free and fair election in how long? So, I'm just saying that the world looks like sometimes like it's leaning toward authoritarians and dictatorships, just like what we had in the 12th century when we had kings and rulers that, they were able to say whatever they said went, and there were no elections. So, more and more of these people are getting elected and they're able to stay in power for 30 years or more. I mean, how long has Putin been in? And, Xi just made himself the leader of forever. So, I think that this is just one of those things that I see now that I noticed that China doesn't seem to be bothered at all by the United States destroyers that are just, sailing through those waters. They keep running these flybys like this week, like it was nothing, which is something they would have never done before, which is something Russia would have never done before. They would have never done this. They're too scared of the West. But now, they're not scared anymore. So we are not that scary.
Well, I just hope that, the ongoing thing with Ukraine, I hope no other countries will follow doing that kind of thing. I mean, we don't want war, and we want peace. We want to be like like Finland, Denmark, all these, countries in Europe that are peaceful, happy people. Why can't we do it?
Why can't we be happy people? I don't know.
Yes.
Anyway, so, but speaking of happy people, let's talk about the viewers out there that watch our show And the questions that they sent in, because I know they have sent in a lot of questions this week, and we want to get to as many of them as we can. So, Lolly Tolentino, what are our listeners who are so happy to be on our show, what have they been asking this week?
All right, Mel from Hadi. According to President Biden, he believes he knows what to stop Putin. What's your guess?
Interesting. Yeah, here's my guess. Okay, so I think the reason that they might have written this question was this big sweet speech that happened this week addressing the European nations. And Biden said at that speech, Putin cannot stay in power. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that the U.S. is going to want to do one of those things that it does sometimes where it changes regimes? Which, if history tells us anything, that never works out the way the U.S. always thinks that it will. So I don't think that's what Biden meant, because he spoke directly in his speech to the people of Russia, saying, you are not our enemy. These are not the actions of a great nation. These are the actions of one man. This is not who you are. This is not the future you deserve for your families, for your children. I'm telling you the truth. This war is not worthy of the Russian people. So, in other words, the U.S. cannot remove Putin. It's up to the Russian people. Which is true. Honestly, what it's up to is the Russian military, which is the way these things go. As we have seen in many countries, one of the best examples, I guess I could say, is the history of the Philippines. When the people rise up, the military follows. And that's what happened there. And I think that's what Biden's idea is. It's the long way around. It's better just to go in and take him out. But, let's wait. I mean, you can't get rid of Putin via election, because he's made himself the supreme leader. I mean, they can't do that. They're going to have to do it, another way. And I think if the people in Russia will rise up, I think the military will quickly follow. And I think that is going to be the way that they are finally going to get rid of Putin. But he warned Putin in this speech, if you set one foot on NATO-controlled land, that is your end. So he had some pretty harsh words. He's not dumb. He's crazy. No, he's not dumb though. So no, he knows that the U.S. cannot directly get into this conflict in Ukraine. So, he knows that the United States is going to play by the rules, and they do for the most part. So mostly all the U.S. can do is stand outside the ring and cheer its friend, maybe throw him a metal chair, which is, from me watching professional wrestling. But they can't get into the ring. Yeah. They can't get into this fight unless Putin jumps outside the ring. The United States is stuck. So the next best thing I think that Joe Biden is trying to do, he's trying to get the Russian people to turn against him. And I think that's what he meant.
Yeah, that's my reading after he says that, because, it's really their people. They can do it if they want.
Yeah.
Because, the power is within the people. The president of any country, they can just, leave or commit suicide or whatever. So because of their ego, sometimes they don't want to get hurt because they lost the war or anything like that. Or, that's actually, if I'm sure the Russians are smart and, they already read that, message of President Biden that, hey, it's your call, not us as U.S. We're there to back you up, but you have to do it yourself. So that's for me, that's a signal.
I mean, the unfortunate thing is they're not going to be able to do it through an election, because Putin, his elections are total shams. They're going to have to amass millions of people and, stand in the street, more people than the military can arrest. So right now, if you say anything, you speak out against the war, they will arrest you. You can get 15 years for speaking out against the war. But what you need is not several thousand people to speak out against the war. They need millions of people to stand in the streets of Moscow and demand that he be taken out. And I think that's when the military might start to change its mind. And that's when you can depose a leader, is when the military changes its mind.
Yeah, the number one guy in the military, if he changes his mind to just turn his back from the president, then that's about
Yeah.
it. That's the big
I mean, because then he does, once the president doesn't have anybody to protect him, then it's over, which is what happened in the Ukraine. That's what happened in Ukraine, a couple of years ago, when that guy, the Putin puppet guy, he had the military in his back pocket, and then all of a sudden the people turned on him, and then the military turned on him, and then he had to, hightail it and get out of there. So he took off with his golden toilets and ran back to Moscow.
Okay, let's go to Imelda of Manila. What do you think the real cause of China Eastern Airlines plane crash and 132 people on board all died?
All right. Yeah. So that happened this week. All right. So this China Eastern Airline was on a routine flight, 2 hours long, flying from one city to another city in the afternoon on a 7-year-old plane, which is basically new. No bad weather conditions, no other planes, 132 passengers. It hit its cruising altitude near 30,000 feet, and then out of nowhere, it went straight to the ground. 157 meters per second in a vertical dive. There was one point where the nose turned up a little bit and then continued to go straight down to the ground. And if that, at that rate of speed that they were going, there was nothing left. It disintegrated on impact. So, usually when planes crash like that, it's usually in a descent. Like the pilot is trying to recover and they're going down at a descent. This didn't happen that way. This plane went straight down out of the sky. And so what could make something like this happen is the big question that I think, this person asked, since there's nothing mechanically odd at the checkup, the flight, everything seemed to be mechanically fine before it took off. And also that planes of this size, which are 737s, I believe, they're meant to glide. So if something goes totally wrong, if all the engines shut off, the plane will glide until the pilots are able to get the engines restarted. And that didn't happen. There was no glide. So there are two theories now about this. One is, complete catastrophic failure, the plane's horizontal tail, which keeps the plane, the thing that keeps the plane in line, it completely failed and turned the plane vertical. And then the runway stabilizer, maybe it went haywire. And, that's what finally turned the plane into a complete straight dive. So seems a little far-fetched. The other theory is it's China. Could have been sabotage. Could have been one of the pilots. Maybe somebody broke into the cockpit. I mean, there's no way to know. I mean, maybe something was done on the ground before the plane took off. Could have been someone on the plane needed to be killed. I know, okay, I'm making up stuff now. But anyway, so far, one of the black boxes was recovered, the things that record everything that happens on the plane. And it's damaged, but they're trying to get the info from it now. And that will have a recording of the pilot's conversation right before the crash. So the problem that they're having with this is there's not much evidence because it's gone. It disappeared when it hit the ground. Now, okay, here's one interesting fact, though, that I read about, that about 10 kilometers from the crash, there was a piece of the plane. So, to add to the mystery, that means that the plane maybe broke up at some point far away before it actually got to that point where it went straight down. So right now, the Chinese have actually called up the United States, and they have their professionals over there, their aviation professionals, trying to help figure out what this is. So, Lolly, what could make a plane in midair just dive and go straight to the ground?
I have no clue.
Me neither. But wow, did you see the video? There was a video of it, the CCTV camera, and the plane just going, yeah.
It was just like a toy.
Yeah.
Remember when you used to play that kind of, the small plane, and all of a sudden, you lost your control and then zoom. Anyway.
I feel bad. I mean, I can't imagine what it must have been like to be on that plane. I mean, you have no idea what's going on. All of a sudden you're going straight down, I know. I feel bad for those people. Glad.
Yeah, imagine 130 people all died.
Yeah.
Oh my
No
God.
chance. No, there's nothing even left. They can't even, they're trying to, they're going through the wreckage trying to see if they can find anything, but there's really not much left.
Yeah. All right. Let's move to Mani of Batangas. It's in the news. Saudi Arabia executes 81 men in one day. Why? Is this something to change?
All right. This story. 24-hour period, the Saudi government executed 81 men. Their crimes were everything from murder to having allegiance to foreign terrorist organizations to having deviant beliefs. Not all these guys were Saudi Arabian. Some of them were from Yemen. Some of them were from Syria. This is a problem in Saudi because many of these people were executed. 81 people. That's a lot of people. They were executed under the idea that they are terrorists. And so I guess the big question is, what is a terrorist exactly under the laws of Saudi Arabia? That's the question. Now, the prince there, he said last year that they were going to curb executions. They weren't going to do as many because they're known as for doing, executions for anything, for speaking out against the Saudi Arabian government. You can have your head whacked off with a sword. So this turned out to be the biggest mass execution they've ever had in modern times. So, the problem many people have with this is that, terrorism could basically just be speaking out against the Saudi government. They're kind of a brutal backwards regime there in the world. So, if you have a different religious belief that goes against the majority in Saudi Arabia, that could be something to get you executed. So, the question was, is this something that should change? Should you be beheaded because you murdered someone, or because you belong to a group that murdered someone, or because you belong to a religion that murdered someone, or because you spoke out against the crown prince who also murdered someone? I have to remind everybody that he did, 2 years ago. So, this is something that I was hoping that was going to change in Saudi Arabia, but it looks like right now they're executing the most people they've ever executed ever.
Yeah, and I think it's part of their. Is it like can I use the word culture for this? Because that's the way they are. I mean, it's in their Muslim religion type of thing that this is how they punish their people. Like in other Western country, and they just execute them through electric chair, or during old times. I mean, even here in the Philippines, they just kill that guy by using their rifle and in the land.
I know, but it's different because in Saudi Arabia, I mean, when they kill somebody in the electric car, or they do capital punishment in the United States, it takes years, and they got to go through all these court systems, and they got to do all these laws.
Yeah,
they don't just take 81 guys and behead them all in one day. That's a lot. That's a lot of chopping. So,
I know.
I don't know what to say about this, except, Saudi Arabia's been doing this for a long time. It's not something new. I just, the thing that concerns me is that the Crown Prince said just recently that he was not going to do this anymore, that they were going to curb these mass executions. And now here they are doing like an 81 guy execution. So, and a lot of these people were executed because they have, deviant ideas. I mean, there you go. With, living in a non-free country, this kind of thing happens.
All right. So I changed my mind. I don't want to be in Saudi Arabia. Anyway, let's go to Edward of Mandaluyong. Do you know what happened to Islamic Center in Canada on March 19, 2022? Another killing inside church?
All right. It's kind of interesting that this question would come next. As far as I know, actually no one was killed in that incident, but it was very scary. A 24-year-old man walked into Islamic Center during the dawn prayer near Toronto with bare pepper spray and an axe, like a little hatchet axe, and he began spraying people and waving his axe around like he was going to, chop at people. So a bunch of people in the church rushed him, tackled him, held him until the police could get there and arrest him. Nobody, there were injuries where people got sprayed in the face with pepper spray, which is really bad. Nobody got, chopped or anything. But, here again, it could have gone much worse. It could have been, he could have killed a lot of people. If he had had a gun or something, it could have gone much, much worse. And it just goes along this idea that, I guess, for the last thousands of years, we have, wanted to kill people that is not our religion. The Christians have, the Muslims have, the Jews have, the pagans have. If you're not my religion, then I want to kill you. And, it's hard to fathom, how this has been in human existence for so long, that if you don't think the way I do, even if you are the same as me, even if you're from the same area and the same place and we're from the same genetic makeup, but if you believe in, a God which you cannot even prove ever or even exists, I'm going to kill you. And here again is another example of that. People that just taking their religion too far, and they think that Muslims are all bad people, and they are not. I can tell you, I can attest to that. Muslims are not all bad people. There are bad Muslims. There's bad Christians. There's bad Jewish people. There's, I can go on and on and on. So, there's good people and bad people. I don't think a religion makes you good or bad.
No, it's not. It just, I know a lot of Muslim because, I lived in Jordan for 4 years before. I have a lot of, good Muslim friends up to now. I mean, they're good people. So, like also in the Philippines, we have the bad people. I mean, we have the good ones and the bad ones. Doesn't matter what nationality. Anyway.
An example of a bad person is somebody that goes into a church with pepper spray and an axe and tries to hurt people.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Dion of Pasig. Chinese blogger Wan Dixian has been labeled national traitor. Can you update and why?
All right. Here's a great example of what it means to live in a free country and what it means to live in a not free country. Because I love this story. This is Guy Wan. He's a Chinese citizen. He's living in the Ukraine. He works there in the Ukraine. He has a nice job. He's a programmer, loves being in the town, has lots of music and art. The place that he lives has lots of good food. And he was writing to his family right when the invasion started and was talking about going shopping at the grocery store and what grocery stores were still open. And then later, after the war was kind of really going, his videos started to change because he began to describe what the Russians were really doing there. The shelling of all the towns, and people are dying, just regular people are dying. And he said he couldn't understand why the Chinese television was saying the opposite of what was really happening in the Ukraine. Why were they spreading all this false information about what was going on? They were saying that people in the Ukraine are using Nazi tactics, which is actually the opposite of what's been going on. So he started telling and showing videos of what was really going on in the Ukraine and posting it on that Chinese version of YouTube, because of course YouTube is banned in China. So, not knowing that he was stepping into a minefield of critics and the government of China, who all of a sudden are putting a magnifying glass on this guy. And, people started to comment that he should give up his Chinese passport and that he's forgotten where he's from and that he has betrayed his country. And he can't understand. He said he can't understand that China, the conflict, that, what they are describing is not what's going on. And his friend, he said his good friend in the Chinese embassy asked him, who's telling you to make these videos? Who's paying you to make these videos? He said, no one's paying me to make these videos. But the friend told him, well, you should just block me because you're not doing what's in the national interest of China. So, almost all of his videos that he's put out have been removed from social media in China by the Chinese government. But he continues to make them anyways, putting them up on YouTube now. So, if you want to know what the Ukrainians are fighting for, this is what they're fighting for. If you want to know what Taiwan is fighting for, this is what they are fighting for. The Philippines, they fought for the same thing, is to be able to speak out and say what is really going on and not have a government tell you, no, you have to say what we say are going on, not what really is going on. And this what has catapulted this guy into the mainstream. He was on CNN. He did an interview on CNN. This guy who was really kind of nobody before, but because he started showing what was going on in the Ukraine and like questioning why the Chinese are, saying stuff that is exactly the opposite of what's going on there.
All right. I don't want to be a vlogger anymore, Eric. All right. Let's go to George of Quezon City. How sad to see bodies of Russian soldiers piling up in Ukraine. Your thoughts?
Well, okay. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say, yay, the Russians are getting killed. I don't even believe that, honestly, I don't believe that many of those Russian soldiers shooting at the Ukrainians really want to be there. I honestly think most of them want to go home. I think they were told to move forward to kill Ukrainians or be put in front of a firing squad. And so that's why a lot of them, I think, are moving forward into Ukrainians and shooting Ukrainians, but not because they want to. And, I'm not sad to see the Russians losing, but I don't believe that this war was even necessary. I don't believe it was necessary for all these Russian soldiers to be killed. And I believe that, Russians are killing civilians, including children. For what reason again? Why are they killing children? Why do we keep seeing videos of people getting tossed into pits because they don't have enough places to put all the bodies? I mean, this kind of things, you watch them and it just makes you cringe. And it's sad. It's sad to see Russian soldiers dying. It's sad to see Ukrainian children dying over a war. For what reason? For a war that, to me anyway, seems completely unnecessary. As far as I can see, all these people are dying. The soldiers, the Russian soldiers, the Ukrainian soldiers, the mothers and fathers, the children, because of one man. Not because of one country that hates the other country. I don't think that a lot of these soldiers hate the Ukrainians. I just think that they, are there because they have to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, because it's the decision of the leader, of the president. But they are the victims of this. Sometimes, the soldiers of Russia. That's how I look at it. So, they're innocent for me. I mean, when I heard of all those, story of those people, they're kind of innocent. They were sent to Ukraine to do this, to do that, and I feel so bad for these people.
I know.
They just follow orders because they're soldiers.
Yeah.
And I think some of them are not even soldiers. So when the leader says, "Go and shoot them," so they will just follow without understanding, understanding the concept of this war. Anyway, that is true. I don't want to.
I can't say anything. Like I said, I am not happy to see Russian soldiers getting killed. When these numbers come out that say 15,000 Russian soldiers are dead. Okay, is that a happy thing? I mean, I'm glad to see the Russians are losing, but I think that this war was completely unnecessary, and all these soldiers and people in Ukraine are unneedlessly dying.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
All right. Okay. Let's go to Pastor Edo Pastic. If NATO itself will declare that it will not accept Ukraine as a member of alliance, do you think Putin can appease and will stop Russian aggression?
Well, the quick answer is no. No, that's not going to happen. NATO has already said that Ukraine cannot be a member of NATO currently. So, saying that they are not going to become a member of NATO when, the fact that Ukraine might even be considered to be a member of the EU, Putin can't stand that. And worse than being part of NATO is being a friend of NATO. And Ukraine is obviously a friend of NATO. So, let's take a look at Crimea. When the Putin puppet boy, whatever his name was ousted from the presidency in Ukraine, Putin retaliated by taken Crimea, and that was a huge setback for the Ukrainians because, why would Putin even want Crimea? Because it sits near one of the largest gas reserves in the world. And that gas reserve was going to put Ukraine on the map as far as being part of the EU. I mean, can you imagine if they were able to get that gas out and start piping it into Europe? Then they would become a direct competitor of Russia. So, there's no, oh, okay, well, we're not going to join NATO. Well, Putin cares about a whole lot of other things other than NATO. And one of them is the fact that enormous, trillions of cubic meters of gas that's underneath, that lake out in front of that sea out in front of Crimea. And I think if he had not invaded Crimea, I think that the Ukraine would be on its way to being a part of the EU. And that kind of power that would give the Ukraine, Putin can't stand that, and he can't overcome that. It doesn't have anything to do with NATO. Because NATO is going to come up against my thing. I don't think NATO was going to allow the Ukraine into the club right away, maybe in the future, but not now. So if they came out and said, okay, well, all right, listen, we're not going to accept Ukraine in NATO, what do you think Putin's going to do? He's not going to do anything. He still wants Ukraine. So if that answers your question, I think no.
All right. Pastor Ed, the answer is no.
That is the answer.
All right. Let's go to Fidel of Alabama. Balikatan exercise, PHUS, it's a Philippine, the US, about to start March 28, 2022, which is tomorrow, with 8,900 armed forces of the Philippines and US military. How cool is that? Do you think this is useful for Pinoys or the Filipinos?
Well, okay. So this military exercise is the U.S. and the military. They do this every so often. They celebrate the continuing cooperation between the two countries. And this year, the event actually coincides with the 75th anniversary of the cooperation agreement between the two militaries. And this will be the largest one ever, as they just said, 5,100 U.S. military, 3,800 Filipino military. They're going to join to work on maritime security, amphibious operations, live fire training, urban operations, counterterrorism, humanitarian assistance. It's a testament to the strength of the Philippines and the United States security relationship. Is it useful to the Philippines? Why does the Philippines need this? Okay, so the current president in the Philippines, the current frontrunner in the presidential race, both of them have said they don't really believe that this is necessary anymore. I believe this is extremely necessary because the U.S. military is the largest, most complete, most expensive military in the world. And these days, the way the world is changing, it's good to know the largest kid on the block, and that would be the U.S. military. Now, right now, the Ukrainians are being invaded, and the U.S. can do nothing. They cannot intervene. They can have sanctions, they can give them weapons, but they can't do a no-fly zone, because if they do a no-fly zone, then they have to shoot down whoever is flying over the top, and they can't do that. Now, if this were to happen in the Philippines, the United States could intervene because they have an agreement that they will intervene. So, the Philippines has the ability to use the largest nuclear military power on the planet as a deterrent for anyone that wants to mess with the Philippines. So this is why I believe, this push by one of the presidential candidates to move toward China and away from the U.S., I think is a bad idea. I mean, you want to be part of China? Do you want to go back to the days of dictatorship where the news is completely controlled by the government? If you speak out against the government, you'll be jailed or killed. Elections are no longer an option. I mean, China's okay with that, but I just think that this agreement, this relationship that the Philippines has with the U.S. is much more important than sometimes people realized. And I think that I'm hoping that the relationship between those two militaries continues.
I am very positive. It will. It will continue. No matter what, whoever will be the president of this country, that relationship will continue. We understand that. They know that. It just sometimes there's some people are using it in politics. But you know what? there should be no politics in this one, because this is one country, one superpower country helping a small country. So I mean, I think everybody's welcome this. Balikatan. I know a lot of this. I mean, Americans before doing the balikatan here in the country, so I know most of them. I mean, before, but now, not much. But then I always look for this kind of thing, because we don't have that much ammunition. We need to learn from the Americans, and we accepted that. We cannot live without them, because we cannot stand alone in this country. We are small. We're not yet independent in anything. So I don't think any president, whoever will take after Duterte, it will continue.
Well, here's what I worry about mostly is that China will say if there's one particular person that is voted in to the presidency, China will say, hey, listen, we're going to help you do this. But the only way we'll help you do this is you have to cut your relation with the United States. And I think that is going to come. I think that was done to Duterte. And Duterte, as clever as Duterte is, he played the middle of the boat. He took a little bit of China and he took a little bit of the United States and he kind of mixed them together. He had to speak out against the United States to appease China. But in the end, he never did what he said he was going to do, which was kill that agreement. He did not do that, even though he made out like he was going to do, and he talked big and tough kind of to appease China because he wanted to also be friends with China. Now, I think that, China is looking at the next possible candidate as a way to cut those ties with the United States, because why is that agreement there? That agreement is there because of China. It is there to stop that giant gorilla from, attacking the Philippines. So I think, this is where, between politics and how things go, I mean, that's what I kind of worry about, what I have read about their policies toward China and toward the United States that are coming up.
Don't worry, Eric. I guarantee you it will not happen. I mean, meaning cutting ties with the U.S., that will never happen. All right. In the Philippines.
All right.
We need America.
It is Lolly Tolentino's guarantee.
You better believe me, Eric. You better believe me.
I'm going to hold you to that, Lolly Tolentino. If China takes over the Philippines, you owe me a dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'll take you to the most expensive golden arches in the Philippines.
All right. We're going to Subway. All right, here we go.
Okay. Let's go to Jojo of Makati. You like this. What can you say about Manny Pacquiao interview with DCRJ? Is it a winnable explanation of his plan if he wins, or a joke?
All right. Yeah. Okay. So, listen, I don't want to say anything bad about Manny Pacquiao. I saw the interview. He means well. There's no question about that. He's a good guy. I listened to his answers. He had very good scripted answers, just like BBM did. Do you think Manny can win? Honestly, I don't think Manny's going to win. I don't think he's even going to really be much of a factor in this election. I don't mean to say that in a bad way, because I like Manny. There is no doubt that Manny Pacquiao has a good heart. Should he be the president of a country is the question. And so, I have said before, and I still believe this, and this is an opinion only, Manny was talked into running for president. I think he's being utilized to take votes from another candidate and boost another person, a rival of that candidate. That's an opinion. I don't have anything to back that up, but I believe at this point, honestly, between us, that the focus of this election should be on Bongbong Marcos and Lenny. Which is, I've said before about the Philippines, that I think this multi-party election system has never been a good idea, and it allows for corruption and people to sneak in the election, and things like that have happened in the past. The amount of disinformation that's going on in this campaign is absolutely monumental, and having more candidates basically just to take down one candidate. I think that this system should be looked at by whoever looks at these kind of things, and that the Philippines should move toward a two-party system when it comes to presidential elections.
Yeah, we had that before, the Nacionalista and the Liberals. So, but it was changed during Aquino, and it became a multi. That's what we call a multicolor party. That's why it's not really good, actually, to be honest with you. And okay, going to Manny's interview, I watch it also. I know he means well. I know what he has in his heart, but the thing is, he's not for this position for me. He's a great boxer. He's a great man in some ways, but then I think it's not really to be president, and that's why I think we talked about this before. Manny can just be, maybe running what do you call this, maybe as governor, maybe senator, whatever, but not for a job of a president. It's a tough job. It takes a lot of experience and a lot of there's so many things. There's some. I mean, if you see the comment of people after that interview, I was like, I feel bad for him.
I did too. I did too. He did a good job. He did a good job answering the questions. It just, he just doesn't look good when he says them. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that's a horrible way of describing it. But like you said, we all love Manny Pacquiao. We do. I mean, every Filipino, I've never met anybody that says, I don't really like Manny Pacquiao. Of course, we all love Manny Pacquiao. And I just, when I saw him, trying to get through these questions and he's saying it and he has a very blank expression. He's trying to remember everything or he's reading it off a teleprompter. I don't know exactly. But it just doesn't come across as, he really knows what he's getting himself into and how he's going to do it. How is he going to pay for all these things that he's talking about? And he just kind of lists the general, this is my general idea, which I think anybody could have done. So, but here again, I don't want to say anything bad about Manny because I love him to death. I think he's a great guy. But here again, from that interview, I'm not sure if this is the right thing for him to be doing.
Yeah, for me, no. He will always be my, my idol when it comes to boxing. Okay, but that's the only way. And being a good person probably. But this campaign period, he turned into something which is not good as a Christian. Okay, and that made me sad actually. But what can I do? I mean, any candidates will bring down and talk negative about somebody because they want to win, right? And this is not a good idea. I mean, why can't we just have a campaign without maligning any candidates? So I just leave everything to God that this country will be in the right hand at the right time, so we can move forward. Because we still have the pandemic, and somebody can bring this country to a better place in the world.
Lali Tolentino, why can't we all be happy?
Yeah, like Finland.
Like Finland. So speaking of Finland, we have to finish our show. So because we're out of time. So for me, Eric Lecain, and Lali Tolentino here on the World News Jam, we'd like to thank everybody who sent in a question this week. They were wonderful questions from our listeners. So we will see everybody next week here on the show on DZRJ and RJ TV next Sunday at 7 o'clock. So please join us then, and everybody be safe out there. We'll see you.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.